Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. So last night, Blizzard decided to unveil the remaining cards of the upcoming expansion, One Night in Karazhan. It's like half the cards in the set. While there are no legendaries, there are some pretty interesting things to be realized, so it is time to review the final batch of these cards. So to kick it off, we have Druid card, Menagerie Warden, 6 mana 5/5, Battlecry. Choose a friendly beast and summon a copy of it. So that's pretty insane. There are some really powerful beasts out there, but to get value from this card, you don't really need to hit that strong of a beast. You can even hit like a 3 mana beast. It's going to be super value, it's going to be super powerful, and because of that, and because it's common, I think it will push Druids in Arena even further than where they are now. Druid's kind of on the top of the mid-level of Arena, so it's possible Druid might be top tier from this one card. I think it's a bit unlikely to have enough of a push, but possibly it could happen. In Constructed, you're probably going to play it largely with Stranglethorn Tiger. While there are a lot of other powerful beasts, Stranglethorn Tiger is going to be the clean play right before it, the on curve on 5. It's going to survive almost 100% of the time, so you're going to have a target very consistently. And Stranglethorn Tiger really has had almost playability in almost any deck since the start of Hearthstone. So there's going to be a lot of stuff. If you're worried about the beast synergy, I think in Constructed you can fit in just a few very key beasts to work with the card. I don't think you have to play all out Beast Druid, but maybe that'll be a thing, maybe that will work. And as far as Arena is concerned, I think in a typical Druid deck that I play, I'm anywhere between 3 and 7 beasts, and I think if I really had to pick a little bit more than normal, I think the average could probably go between 5 and 10, so I think you won't have a problem finding a target in Arena, and even if you don't, it's not that bad of a card. The opportunity cost for the card is fairly low. Then we have Cloaked Huntress. Hunter common, 3 mana 3/4. That is premium stats, and your secrets cost 0 is the ability. So it doesn't mean your next secret costs 0. That means all of your secrets while this card is in play cost 0 mana. So you could play this, and then if you have 5 secrets in your hand, you could play all 5 of them for 0 mana. And that is absolutely batshit crazy. That is so crazy that I think it'll spawn a new archetype of Hunter in Constructed. I don't think this card, well, I think it could fit in existing Hunter decks. I think this card will alter those existing Hunter decks. I don't think this is a card you just stick in mid-range Hunter and play it as is. I think you're going to make a few adjustments because this is going to dictate the flow of play in that type of deck. In Arena, it's a ridiculous card, but Hunters need a lot more help than just this. Even though this is a really powerful card, you cannot consistently draft good secrets in Arena, but it is a 3 mana 3/4, which again is really, really powerful. So they get a bit of a bump, but I still think Hunter's going to be bottom tier in Arena in the next block. Then we have Cat Trick, a new secret from Hunter. After your opponent casts a spell, summon a 4/2 Panther with Stealth. So that's pretty good. That's generally what you can expect out of a decent value 3 mana card. But, in Arena, your opponent is often not going to play that many spells. I've actually played some Arena decks with no spells. While if your opponent has to go second and they have the coin, that's obviously going to give you some opportunity. So that's going to be a pretty decent card in Arena. In Constructed, it's going to be a bit difficult to assess. Hunters really need to win the game like at the start. So, 2 mana 4/2 Panther's extremely powerful, but if you're getting that on turn 5 or 6, it's really not that powerful at all. And it's a card that might be very easy to play around if all the Hunters are running it. If you can anticipate it, I think it's a pretty weak secret, but if it catches you off guard, it can be pretty powerful. To note, it's important that it dodges board clears because it triggers after your opponent casts a spell. If your opponent casts a board clear when you have Cat Trick up, the board clear is going to happen, then it's going to spawn the Panther. So it's not pathetically weak, but I think it's generally a little bit weak, but we'll see. It definitely has quite a bit of potential in both formats. Then we have Medivh's Valet, 2 mana 2/3 Mage card, common. The Battlecry, if you control a secret, deal 3 damage. So if you control a secret, this card is absolutely insanity. Will it play in Constructed, though? It's difficult to say. There are very few playable secrets in Constructed, so it's very difficult to see if that will work out. But in Arena, this is an incredibly powerful card. On one hand, because if you have a secret, and often enough in Arena you do have just a random secret or two. If you have a secret, if you get the Battlecry, the card is off the charts. But in Arena, if you don't, a 2-mana 2/3 is just good. That's just a good card. And because your class cards are doubled in frequency in your draft, and because there's a pretty hefty bonus on the occurrence of the cards in the last expansion, this card is going to mean that whenever you play Mage, you're going to have a large boost in early game consistency. And again, while this card is not going to push Mage, too far out there, it is kind of roughly number 1 in Arena and will probably still be in the next expansion, it adds a lot of consistency, and that consistency is going to push Mage quite a bit. So yeah, pretty damn good card. And then we have Nightbane Templar, 3-mana 2/3 battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, summon 2 1/1 whelps. So if you're not holding a dragon, it's absolute garbage. And if you are holding a dragon, it's slightly better than like Razorfin Hunter. Well, that's slightly better. It gives you another minion, so that could be pretty decent. But I don't think this will really work out. It's definitely terrible in Arena, and because it's common, this will probably push Paladin down quite a bit. But I don't know, it's difficult to say. Paladin needs a lot of help in Constructed, and if this even helps them at all, I don't imagine it's anywhere near enough for it to actually see play. And we have Silvermoon Portal, another one of these portal cards. This is a 4-mana Paladin variety. Give a minion +2/+2, and summon a random 2-cost minion. So +2/+2 is actually a pretty powerful effect for 2 mana, and you get a random 2-cost minion for 2 mana, and it's 2 effects in 1 card, so that's actually pretty powerful. I think this is a great card for Arena. But again, I don't think it'll really push much in terms of Constructed. There's already better buffs in the game that Paladins have access to, and Paladin is still not that playable of a class right now in the Constructed format. So I don't think this will do very much at all. I don't think so. And then we have Purify. This is a Priest common card which silences a friendly minion and draws you a card. And it costs 2 mana. And it silences only a friendly minion. And it's common, and it's a Priest card. I'll talk about this card a little bit more in detail in the other video today, but this card is very clearly not good. The other Priest common is Priest of the Feast. 4-mana 3/6. Whenever you cast a spell, restore 3 health to your hero. So it's probably not that great. If you've played 4-mana 3/6s as a Priest recently, and you might have if you're playing the Cthulhu decks, you'd realize that those cards are actually very powerful. So the stat line is very powerful. Does it matter to heal for 3 when you cast a spell? I would say probably not, but I think there's actually some potential. I think this is actually a pretty decent card that I think was a little bit overlooked by some of the reviews that I've seen out there on these cards already. In Arena, it's a terrific card. Even if you have no spells, 4-mana 3/6 is amazing. The Priest win condition is you play a card that has more health than your opponent's attack, and it doesn't die the turn after you play it. And this has a good chance of fulfilling that. So yeah, it's actually a really good card. It does not anywhere nearly outweigh the downside of the previous card. So overall in Arena, even though Priest is the worst class right now, I think it'll definitely be dropped down even further than what it is, because while this card is really good, the other is exceptionally bad. So I don't think Priest is going anywhere, but, it's something. This is a good card. The Priest rare is Onyx Bishop, a 5-mana 3/4, and the battlecry summons a friendly minion that died this game. So it basically has the Resurrect effect, but Resurrect says random, so some people speculated that you might be able to choose the minion that died this game. I think this is not the case. This is definitely not going to happen, guys. I think it is the Resurrect effect on a minion. I think that's good. I think this is a good minion. The Resurrect effect is a powerful effect. The reason Resurrect sucks ass is because you can't play it on curve. So, Onyx Bishop, you do kind of play. I mean, by turn 5, you've lost something, and that something is generally at least a 2-drop. So you're gonna get value out of this card. It's pretty good. It has high combo potential. I think it might see some play, but since it's the last Priest card in Constructed, I don't think Priest is going anywhere. These cards are decent, but they're not good enough to do anything for Priests. And that goes as well for Arena. So, yeah. Pretty sad. Then we have Swashbuckler, the 1-mana 1/1 pirate for Rogue in the common slot. Battlecry, add a random class card to your hand from your opponent's class. Just clean, very, very good card. Very similar to, what is it, the Undercity Huckster, I think it's called. You just get a downscaled version of that, but the pirate tag is worth something, and the battle cry is more valuable than the death rattle in a lot of instances. Maybe not in constructed if you're playing a death rattle themed deck, but if you're not doing that, it's probably better that you have the effect on a battle cry than any other type of trigger. So the card is actually very good, so Rogue will probably gain quite a bit from having this card in Arena, which is kind of not what we want, but okay. Then we have Deadly Fork, 3-mana 3/2, Death Rattle, add a 3/2 weapon to your hand. The 3/2 weapon that you add to your hand from the Death Rattle is a 3-mana weapon, so that is a very crap 3-mana weapon, and it is a pretty crappy 3-mana minion, but not as bad as you think in Arena, because usually the 2 and 3 drops in the game just trade for one another. So is a 3/2 for 3 mana going to trade with most of the 3 drop? Yeah, it is. So it's actually not that bad. I think it's a 3 drop that trades about as well as most of the 3 drops in the game, and you get a weapon to sustain your tempo. So I think actually it's a pretty decent card. It is an above average card. It is in the common slot, which means that is a good thing for Rogue, and Rogue will again be pushed further into the higher power levels of Arena play. Don't kid yourself for Constructed. And then we have Spirit Claws, a Shaman weapon, a 1-mana 1/3, and has +2 attack while you have spell damage. And it's important to realize that you don't necessarily have to have spell damage minions in your deck, though you might want to put some in to get some more consistency out of this card. You can definitely get some totems that have spell damage from your hero power, activating this and making it pretty powerful. So in Arena, a 1-mana 1/3 weapon, even if you never activate the higher damage or the spell damage, I think is a decent card. It's around average, but weapons in Arena are so powerful that I would call it above average just because of the significance of these type of cards. In Constructed, you can probably make use of this card, but I don't know if it fits in the aggro Shaman deck. And if it doesn't fit in the aggro Shaman deck, it's probably not that relevant to the game. So probably won't see too much Constructed play, if any, but a nice little Arena card there. Then we have Wicked Witch Doctor, 4-mana 3/4. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random basic totem. So basic totems are presumably the ones that you get off of your hero power, which are generally crappy. But if you get enough of them, you can spam the taunt totem every single turn with your hero power. So it's a bad card, I think. But if you reach critical mass in a fatigue-like situation, I think it can be a very powerful card. But again, it's not going to automatically fit into aggro Shaman, therefore it's pretty bad. In Arena, it's pretty bad because you generally don't have spells, and if you do, you're just going to win regardless of whether you have this card or not in your deck. And we have Maelstrom Portal, the rare that Shaman got here. It's a 2-mana spell, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, and then summon a random 1-cost minion. So you're probably thinking, yeah, I think I've seen this effect before, and you'd be right. There is Arcane Explosion. So we have power creep over Arcane Explosion, and while that might not seem pretty significant because you probably haven't seen Arcane Explosion very much, though it's pretty good in spell damage decks, and I'd imagine similarly Maelstrom Portal would be pretty good if you have a few spell damage cards. Seems to be that's something they're trying to push, but there's nowhere near enough cards for Shaman to actually make that work in the current state of the game, even after this expansion. Regardless, it is the first time in Hearthstone that there is a power creep over a class card. All the power creeps that we've seen so far in the game have happened over neutral cards. Most class cards are good enough that better versions of those would be kind of broken. Class cards are better than neutral cards. This is the first time we see direct power creep over a class card. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's interesting, and I like the card, so I'm not going to complain too much. I just wanted to point that out. And then we have Ironforge Portal. So this is a warrior card, portal style, gain 4 armor, summon a random 4-cost minion. Now, most of the 4-cost minions are actually pretty good, so there's that, but, getting like a random 4-cost minion is worth less than 4 mana. It's probably worth close to 3 mana, so is gaining 4 armor for 2 mana and doing nothing really all that great? it's not that great. If you compare it to like Shield Block, it's kind of like similar style of value, but Shield Block gives you consistency, and you can play in the early stages of the game where you generally don't have very many options as a control deck. Ironforge Portal, you can't play in the early game and does not give you consistency, so I think it's actually garbage. Now for Arena, maybe it's a little bit different, but I still think it's pretty crappy. And we have some of the neutral cards. We have Arcane Anomaly, 1 mana, 2/1. Whenever you cast a spell, give this minion +1 health. So pretty cool little card. I think it has the potential to see some play in a few decks because there's already a lot of decks that just push a lot of lead by just having a lot of spell synergy. This is a spell synergy card with a decent effect. It's a 1-drop. 1-drops in general are pretty broken. I don't see it being too amazing in Arena, but again, if you have a lot of spells, it's a 1-drop. It's hard to get good 1-drops in Arena, so it's just a pretty good card, I guess. Pretty good card. Maybe some play. We have Arcanosmith, 4 mana, 3/2, Battlecry, summon a 0/5 minion with Taunt. So that's a pretty interesting effect. I mean, if you add up the stats of the card, that's like getting a 3/7 with partial Taunt. That's insane! Well, it's not really that insane, because minions with 0 and 1 attack are generally quite worthless, but it has Taunt, and Taunt just stops a bunch of damage, so it's a curious little card. I think if you had a lot of minion buffs, it could actually be very good. So if you have like Flame Tongue Totem in your Shaman Arena draft, I think a card like Arcanosmith is actually very powerful, but I think in the general case, it's a very crappy card. I don't think it's good enough for Constructed, but I wonder. Who knows? Maybe. And we have a Runic Egg, 1 mana, 0/2, Death Rattle, draw a card. So it's not a terrible card, but I don't think it's better than Dragon Egg, and Dragon Egg already sees very limited play, so Runic Egg will probably see even more limited play than that. So it probably won't see play. So I guess it's kind of bad. Then we have Violet Illusionist. It's a 3 mana, 4/3. During your turn, your hero is immune. That is so cool. That is one of the coolest cards I've ever seen. There's a lot of applications to having an effect like this. You can play this when you're going to take a lot of damage from a spell that deals damage to both players. You can play this when you're going to take a lot of damage from attacking a powerful minion with your weapon. You can play this when you think you might die to fatigue damage and you otherwise will not die to fatigue damage, which makes a few games a lot more interesting than you might think. So there's a lot of very cool, very niche applications for the card, and a 3 mana 4/3 is pretty damn solid as it is. It's in the common slot, so I think there's going to be some very wild moments in Arena where this is going to shine, and I think it might actually be good enough to make some Constructed, probably control lists, but it's probably not going to be top tier. It's probably going to be like, probably like the 10th best game probably the 10th best deck in the game at the time might consider running a card like this. So I don't know. Pretty limited, but very cool. We have Pantry Spider, 3 mana, 1/3 beast, summon a 1/3 spider, which again presumably is a beast. Decent stats, a lot of health for 3, so probably see some play in some aggressive decks, but has probably a lot of options by now, so maybe not. Very whatever Arena card. Then we have Mandarin Magician, 5 mana, 4/4, Battlecry, give a random friendly beast, dragon, and murloc +2/+2. So again, very much like a few other cards released, if you hit any one of those, this card gets value. It's 6/6 for 5 with partial charge if the minion it buffs can attack that turn. So if you get any of those, it's a super powerful effect, super powerful card. If you get 2 of those, you can probably design a deck around it. So while I don't think mid-range is even going to work in Constructed right now, if mid-range works, I think this is going to give you another option to play it, and I hope it does because I think that's a very cool archetype. In Arena, I think it's going to increase the value of Beast Dragons and Murlocs, and I think the card is going to be pretty solid if you get a few of those. Then we get Avian Watcher, 5 mana 3/6, Battlecry. If you control a secret, gain +1/+1 at taunt. So, 5 mana 3/6 for Arena is decent enough. For Constructed, it's not even close. So really for Constructed, it's only if you can consistently have a secret prior to turn 5, because it's not that relevant later in the game, but it's really relevant on turn 5. So it's very difficult to do that unless you have some cards that cheat out secrets. If you have some of those, maybe you can make it work, but overall, I think it's there's just not enough cards to support this effect, but I could be wrong. There's a few out there, and maybe that archetype will be good enough. I think for Arena, this is pretty bad card because it's going to be very rare that you can play this with a secret up on curve. We have Moat Lurker, 6 mana 3/3. destroy a minion and the death rattle resummon it. While it's not clear, I think we can quite safely assume that the resummon happens if you kill your opponent's minion, it will resummon the minion for them. So, while there's a lot of very cool applications, I don't want to go too much into it because there are just a ton of possibilities with this card. I just think 6 mana is too much for constructed play, but it is such a cool card. I'm sure some people will try to make it work, but I'm quite sure they will fail, and I'm pretty sure I will be one of those people. For Arena, while removal is really premium, it's again kind of on the edge. I think it's still going to be a decent card there. And then lastly, I think what is easily the most used and powerful card of the entire set, Arcane Giant. 12 mana, 8/8, very much like a few other giants, costs 1 less for each spell you've cast this game. So we know that there are spell-reliant decks out there, and we know that they work in aggro, they work in tempo, they work in mid-range, they work in control. While this card is probably not going to see play in the aggro variety because the aggro spell decks already are marginal with consistency because spells are generally reactionary cards, it can be very difficult to win a game if you happen to draw one of these in your early game. So I doubt it's going to see too much play in the aggressive decks, but anything past that, this card is going to be absolutely insane, and I would imagine there's going to be a few new decks created just from the existence of this card, and combos potentially with like Faceless, dropping Taunt, Faceless Shambler, just so many cool things if you can cheat out a ridiculously big minion for 0, and this is your champion if you want to design a deck like that. So good luck in deck building. That concludes all the Karazhan cards reviewed, and overall, while there are some major disappointments in the set, I think there are some very cool deck-defining cards that I cannot wait to try. So let you guys know how that works for me in the videos to come, but for now, hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I'll see you guys in a little bit.